Hello again. Um, the first story that I'm going to briefly discuss with you is Liz Lochhead's story, Not Changed. She wrote this story in 2009 and she dedicated it to all transsexuals in Scotland, but also elsewhere in the world. So it's very relevant. It tells you a lot about the position of the marginalized group, of this marginalized group in the Scottish society nowadays. Um, before reading this story, I was not personally acquainted with the whole issue of transsexualism. So I've decided to get acquainted with it in a more detailed manner. So the first, this is why I offered the broad theoretical framework. In the first section, I talked about the definition of transgender. So what is important is this terminology, to know what the term transgender stands for, then what transvestite, transsexual individual refer to, and so on and so on. So the first, let's say, theoretical issue was related to the whole terminology of transgender experience that I was not familiar with before. And when I analyzed this story for the very first time, I was basically, I found it necessary to introduce myself with these key concepts that are related to the transgender experience. Once I did that, the next step was to see whether trans studies are relevant for the academia nowadays. Since I found many academic papers dealing with the notion of trans studies as a sort of a place in between feminist and queer theory. So I found I sort of needed a more theoretical background coming from the transsexual academics, and I found certain papers dealing with this issue, and basically realized that there are many transsexual individuals who are fighting for their place within academia, and they feel marginalized because their own voice is not heard, not only in the society at large, but also in academia. And I've consulted some of the theoreticians coming from this area of trans studies, Stone, Stryker, Rank. You can see it in the handout that I will also distribute. And they all say that today it's an imperative that trans individuals speak for themselves in the formation of trans theory. Their position within the academia basically reflects their marginalized status in the society, not only Scottish society, but in the society, in the modern society at large. So these issues serve to me as a good theoretical, let's say, introduction to Lochhead's story, Not Changed. The story is about a transsexual individual, Michael, a person who receives a hormone replacement therapy and becomes a female, Michelle, and it deals with the encounter of Michelle and one of her old acquaintances from the school days. And basically, Liz Lochhead, who is very famous in Scotland, she was the Scottish Makar, that is the national poet of Scotland in the period of 2011 to 2016. And she, in her writing, she usually insists on the idea of speaking, writing in public as a sort of a political act. So in her works, she gives a voice to all the marginalized groups. So these are usually women, but in this particular story, she gives a very powerful voice to transsexual individuals. And basically, although she does not share this experience of being a transsexual person, she offers them support and basically pleads for their inclusion in all the spheres of the society. In order to go through this story to analyze it, I relied on the insights of Judith Butler, who wrote about gender trouble in 1990. So she was one of the sources, the critical sources that I consulted. After introducing some of Butler's insights, I also introduced some of the insights of Serrano. This is a critic who basically distinguishes between traditional sexism and oppositional sexism. In order to describe various forms of discrimination to trans women, alluding mostly to their perceived femininity, Serrano also coins the expression trans misogyny. And this was very much useful to me in this story because it talks about this change of sex from male to female. So, and she even introduces a very important concept of effeminania, which I also used in the analysis of this story. So, relying on all these theoretical insights, I analyzed the story, and then I gave a conclusion in which I basically stated that Lochhead is on the side of all the marginalized groups within the Scottish society, and unfortunately transsexual individuals are definitely they definitely represent a marginalized group in the Scottish society nowadays. I also, you can also, when I distribute this handout, you can also see all the references that I used, and you can also see the way, my way for, quoting these sources that I used and the way that I wrote the abstract.